Midnight at Mercy General Hospital was loud, bright, and tense. The emergency room buzzed with noise, machines beeping, nurses shouting, people rushing. Dr. Ken Mitchell, in his 30s, leaned over a teenage boy with a gunshot wound. His hands moved fast, pressing the boy's chest. Again and again, sweat rolled down his face. His arms ached. His mind screamed. 14 hours of surgeries, stress, and life-or-death choices. But finally, the boy's heartbeat returned. The monitor beeped steady. The kid would live. Ken stepped back, his scrubs soaked in sweat and blood. He leaned against the wall, body shaking from exhaustion. His eyes were red. He had no strength left. His phone buzzed. It was Brad, his brother. The voice on the other end was loud, happy, carefree. "Ken, BBQ's hot. Uncle Dave's wasted. Mom says you're bringing the mac and cheese, right? Don't forget the big tray." Laughter in the background, music, clinking drinks, a world far from this hospital. Ken looked at his hands. Blood. He didn't say a word. He just ended the call, dropped the phone into his pocket, and walked out of the hospital. The air outside was cold. He didn't feel it. He drove home in silence, the road ahead blurry, not from the rain, but from everything he had given that day, and everything his family could never understand. Ken Mitchell was the kind of man people admired, but never really understood. A top-tier cardiothoracic surgeon, sharp as a scalpel and precise under pressure, he spent most of his waking hours elbow-deep in blood, trying to buy strangers a few more years of life. Yet when he stepped outside the hospital and into the arms of his family, he felt invisible, used, drained, and dismissed. At 36, Ken had already accomplished what most surgeons twice his age struggled to achieve. Years of medical school, brutal residency shifts, and a single-minded focus had built him into someone who could handle cardiac arrest with a calm breath. But he couldn't fix his family. That was the wound he never figured out how to close. He carried everyone, literally. Every month, large chunks of his paycheck vanished into other people's pockets. Brad, his older brother, hadn't held a job for more than 6 months since college. Every time Brad failed, and he failed often, it was Ken who picked up the pieces. The food truck dream, the tech startup, the protein supplement company. Each venture cost thousands, sometimes tens of thousands, with nothing to show for it but drunken apologies and finger-pointing. Yet Brad still walked around like a king, charismatic, charming, always with a beer in hand and a joke at the ready. He was the type of guy who made strangers laugh in a minute and burn bridges in 10, and somehow he always made Ken feel like he was the problem. "You think you're better than us?" Brad would say, eyes glassy. "You wouldn't even have this job if it weren't for Mom." And Mom, Eleanor, was a whole story on her own. She was sharp, calculated, and could summon guilt like a weapon. If Ken hesitated to send money, she'd say things like, "Don't forget who fed you when your father died." She had a habit of rewriting the past in her favor, making herself the selfless hero, the eternal giver. But she never really gave, she just demanded. And she always made it clear that Brad, her firstborn, was her favorite. Brad was misunderstood. Brad was creative. Brad just needed more support, and Ken was supposed to provide it. Ken didn't mind helping at first. After all, they were family. But over the years, the help became expected, routine. It wasn't kindness anymore. It was duty. His sister, Haley, only added to the drain. At 27, she still hadn't finished anything she started. College was just a backdrop for her ever-shifting ambitions. Journalism, psychology, interior design, yoga certification, influencer dream. Every few months came a new request. Money for tuition, for rent, for a new camera, for just one more chance. And Ken always gave in, not because he believed in her plans, but because the moment he said no, the whole family acted like he was punishing her. Haley never saw Ken as a brother. She saw him as her fallback plan. She never asked how he was, never visited him, never even called unless she needed something. Then there was Vanessa, Brad's wife. If entitlement had a voice, it would sound exactly like hers. She was obsessed with appearances, always posting Instagram stories of their beautiful home, hosting parties, dropping luxury brand names like confetti. The house she flaunted, Ken paid for it, every square inch. But she never thanked him. Instead, she rolled her eyes at his plain clothes, mocked his schedule, and told her friends that Ken's just socially awkward. She encouraged Brad's resentment, whispered poison in his ear, and acted like Ken should be grateful just to be invited to family events. So when Ken pulled up to Brad's massive suburban McMansion that Sunday evening, the weight of all of it sat on his shoulders like bricks. He was still in scrubs, too tired to change. He hadn't eaten in 14 hours. He had just spent most of his day battling to keep a teenage boy alive after a shooting, his chest cavity ripped open, heart barely beating. And now here he was, holding a tray of mac and cheese, stepping into a house full of people who didn't care what he'd been through. The moment he opened the door, the noise hit him like a slap. Laughter, sizzling meat, thumping music, kids running around the pool, adults sipping drinks, talking loud, and not a single soul noticed the exhaustion carved into his face. "There you are!" Eleanor barked from the kitchen, not missing a beat. "You're late! Grill's ready. Hurry with the mac and cheese." Brad stumbled toward him with a beer in hand. "Look at you, Doc, saving lives again. Good man. Now hurry up, feed your starving family." Vanessa gave him a once-over, her expression tight with mockery. "You came in that? Couldn't even throw on something halfway decent." Haley sat with her legs crossed on a lounger, phone in hand, barely looking up. No greeting, no smile, just scrolling. Ken didn't respond. He walked to the kitchen, set the tray down, and stood still for a few seconds. The sounds around him seemed to blur. No one asked if he was okay. No one noticed the bloodstains on his sleeves, or the tremble in his fingers. They just grabbed paper plates and dug in like he was their personal caterer. From the backyard he could hear their voices. "Ken should move closer," Vanessa said. "It's not like he has a real life out there." "Yeah," Brad added, mouth full. "He's got the cash. He can afford to visit more. Buy us a pool heater too, huh, Doc?" "Ken's lucky he doesn't have to worry about kids," Eleanor said. "All that money and nothing to spend it on except us. It's only right." Ken clenched his jaw, staring at the kitchen counter. All those years, all those sacrifices. For what? A family that only saw him as a walking wallet. Not a man, not a brother, not a son, just a provider. He took a breath, turned, and walked outside to the patio. Everyone went silent when they saw him. "You want mac and cheese?" he said flatly. "Serve yourselves." There was an awkward chuckle. Brad raised a beer. "Someone's cranky. Long day, huh?" Ken didn't smile. 14 hours. Teenager got shot. Bled out on the table twice. I held his heart in my hands. Got it beating again. Then I drove here because Mom said I had to bring food. The silence thickened. He looked at each of them. "None of you asked how I was." "Not once." He turned and walked into the house, ignoring the stunned looks behind him. He didn't head for the kitchen. He went to the study, his father's old room, closed the door and locked it. For a moment he stood there, letting the quiet wrap around him. The photos on the wall stared back, memories of a man who had once kept this family grounded. And for the first time in years, Ken felt something new. Not guilt, not fatigue, clarity. Ken mechanically preps mac and cheese. His movements are slow, empty. He doesn't feel the heat from the oven or the weight in his legs. His mind keeps flashing back to the ER. Blood, panic, the sound of a mother screaming while her son bled out under Ken's hands. He saved that boy. 14 hours of non-stop intensity. His body aches. His brain feels like mush. And yet, here he is, grating cheese. From the patio, laughter erupts again. Ken hears Brad's voice first, carefree and loud. Ken loves cooking. Relaxes him after surgery. Ken pauses, hand gripping the spoon tighter. That's not true. He doesn't love this. He does it because no one else will, because they expect him to. Then Vanessa chimes in, her voice sharp with sarcasm. "Least he can do after forgetting Mum's diamond earrings." Ken's shoulders stiffen. That was a lie. He never forgot anything. In fact, that month, Brad had called in tears because he was months behind on rent. Ken covered it, paid it quietly to avoid embarrassment. Now somehow, they've twisted that into him stealing from their mother. Haley joins the gossip, her tone lazy and disinterested. "Promised me a new car, probably treating addicts." His jaw clenches. He never promised her anything. She asked. He said they'd talk after she passed her real estate exam. Again, but Haley never passes anything. She just expects things to appear. And then, Eleanor, calm, sure, as if she's stating a fact that no one can question. Ken knows his duty, blessed to care for family. That's when the spoon slips from his fingers. It clatters to the floor, not loud, but enough to snap something inside. Ken wipes his hands on a kitchen towel. Slowly, he walks toward the patio, the laughter fading into silence as they notice him. Brad is on his third beer, leaning back in a chair. Vanessa is curled beside him, still smirking. Haley's on her phone, barely looking up. Eleanor sits with perfect posture, queen of her little kingdom. Ken stands in the doorway. His voice trembles, but not with fear. Duty, he says quietly. They all look up. Is that all I am to you? Your servant? Your ATM? No one answers. I just spent 14 hours trying to save a kid with a bullet in his chest, Ken says, voice rising. His mother begged me not to let him die. I opened him up with my own hands. I gave everything I had today, and while I did that, you were here, planning a barbecue. Brad chuckles, trying to ease the tension. Hey man, you made it, right? Time to relax. No, Ken cuts in. You said, I love this? I don't. I do it because none of you lift a finger. Vanessa, you lied about those earrings. I covered your husband's rent. Vanessa's face drops. Haley, he says, turning. You want a car? Try earning it. You've dropped out of more things than I can count. Haley looks away. And you, Ken faces his mother. You say I'm blessed to care for you. Number, I'm cursed with guilt that you've spent years using against me. You treat me like a wallet, not a son. Eleanor doesn't blink. Watch your tone, Kenneth. He steps forward. Number, I'm done watching anything. I've watched all of you drain me dry and laugh while doing it. Silence. The music from inside the house is still playing faintly, but no one speaks. You want mac and cheese? Ken says, his voice suddenly calm. Make it yourselves. Then he turns and walks back into the house, not toward the kitchen, but toward the hallway, past the stairs, to the closed door at the end. His father's old study, left untouched for years. He opens the door and walks inside, and for once, no one dares to follow him. Brad was the first to burst in. He didn't knock, didn't pause, just shoved the door open and pointed at Ken like he was on trial. His face was red, his breath stinking of beer. You really gonna disrespect Mum like that? In front of everyone? He shouted. She's your mother, man! After all she's done for us? Ken didn't answer. He sat quietly in the chair near the old desk, his hands resting on his knees. His heart was still racing, but not from guilt. This time, from something deeper, something that had been building for years. Eleanor's voice echoed from the hallway behind Brad. She didn't come in, but she made sure her voice carried. I carried you for 9 months, Ken. I raised you. And this is how you repay me? By shaming your family? In front of guests? Then Vanessa's sharp voice joined in. Guess someone's too big for his scrubs now. Saving lives doesn't mean you get to treat us like garbage, Ken. Haley popped her head in from behind Brad and added, almost like a child complaining to a parent, what about my car, Ken? You promised me. Ken stood up slowly, walked to the door. Without a word, he shut it and locked it. He didn't slam it. He didn't yell back. He just turned the lock and stood still for a moment, breathing in silence. They banged and yelled for a while longer. Then finally they walked away, their voices fading. Ken turned to the room. His father's study hadn't changed much. Books lined the walls, old trophies, a few photos, and the desk, large, solid, the one place in the house no one used after his dad died. Something about it always felt like it still belonged to him. He sat down in the creaky leather chair, stared at the dust-covered desk, and opened a drawer. Inside, tucked at the back, was a wooden box. He remembered it, his father's lockbox. No one had touched it since the funeral. Ken picked it up. It was heavier than he remembered. There was a small key taped under the drawer. Carefully he opened the lock. Inside was paperwork, neat, labelled, organised, his dad's style. He flipped through it slowly, and then he froze. It was a will, an official, notarised copy, dated 2 years before their father died. The family's Cape Cod beach house had been left entirely to Ken, not to all the kids, not to Eleanor, just Ken. The wording was clear, for Kenneth Mitchell, for his reliable nature and ability to provide. May this home bring him peace. Ken leaned back, stunned. No one ever told him. The family kept using the beach house like it was a shared asset. Brad had stayed there every summer, throwing parties, calling it his escape from stress. All while Ken paid for Brad's house in the city, paid the bills, paid everything. His hand trembled slightly as he picked up the next document. Spreadsheets, clean, precise, dates, amounts, names. His father had tracked every dollar Ken sent after his death, probably expecting Ken would need proof someday. There it was, every cent. Brad's failed businesses, $19,500. Haley's college tuition, online classes, and whatever she spent on trying to be an influencer, $78,000. Vanessa's designer handbags, home renovations, and random emergency gifts, $36,000. Eleanor's expenses, medical bills, travel, spa treatments, $82,000. Brad's mortgage, $59,000 and counting. Total, $450,000, almost $500,000, gone in 7 years. All of it from Ken, none of it repaid, not even acknowledged. He stared at the numbers. Each one felt like a slap, a memory, a moment when he told himself it was okay, it was family, he could handle it. He was strong. They needed him. He had enough. But now, looking at the truth on paper, he finally saw what he had really been all this time. Their safety net, their punching bag, their backup plan. He closed the box and held it in his lap. For the first time in years, he let himself feel what he always pushed away. Anger, betrayal, grief. He had spent his life trying to hold this family together, and they had spent theirs quietly pulling him apart. And now it was all in his hands. The truth, the proof, the choice, and they had no idea. Ken moved out of the big, lonely house and into a small apartment near the hospital. It was quiet, clean, and finally his own. No one shouted at him, no one asked for money, and no one waited for him to bring food. For the first time in years, he felt peace. He started going to therapy, talking to someone about everything he had bottled up, about being the family's wallet, about never feeling like enough, and about the truth Eleanor had thrown at him. He focused on his work, showing up to the hospital clear-headed and calm. He didn't drag the weight of guilt behind him anymore. His longtime friend Marcus, a sharp lawyer, helped him file the lawsuits, one for eviction, the other to recover the money. Ken didn't enjoy suing his family, but it wasn't about revenge. It was about standing up for himself finally. The family didn't stay quiet. Brad, Eleanor, and Vanessa started talking to local papers and gossip websites. They told stories about Ken abandoning his poor sick mother, about how he was always distant and cold, how money had changed him. Headlines called him a cold-hearted doctor and a selfish son. Strangers online attacked him, but Ken stayed quiet. The court would see the truth. When the case finally went to trial, the truth came out fast. The judge read the will, confirming the beach house belonged to Ken alone. The financial records showed every dollar that had been spent, clear proof that Ken had supported them for years. Lies crumbled under real numbers. The court granted the eviction, and Ken won the full $450,000 plus legal costs. Eleanor's trust fund, which she had tried to hide, was upheld too. She had enough to care for herself. No one had to suffer, but they no longer had access to Ken's pocket. The judge saw through everything, the manipulation, the guilt, the emotional control. After the ruling, Ken stood outside the courthouse and breathed deeply. He wasn't angry. He wasn't even sad. He was free. A few months later, he sold the beach house. He used the money to symbolically settle the debts his family owed him, not because he had to, but because he wanted closure. Then he made one final choice. He adjusted Eleanor's trust fund so it covered only her basic needs. Nothing more. No luxuries, no extras, just care. Then he blocked them all. Every number, every email, every door they might use to come back. He chose himself. He chose peace. And for the first time in his life, he felt whole. Do you think Ken did the right thing by cutting ties with his family and starting fresh? Or should he have tried to forgive them and keep the peace? I'd love to hear what you think. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update.